or aspects of it in one or two places, but at the masjid where I'm from, we did it there as a whole series called Entertainment in Islam. And the idea was to talk about those things that many of us are involved in as a source of entertainment, as a source of fun, to pass the time. You know, we enjoy ourselves doing different things, whether it's sports, whether it's television or movies, whether it's games, whether it's something else. And the idea was to try to tackle these topics from an Islamic perspective, because sometimes we may be watching something or playing something or doing something, and we may have questions about, is this something which is good or bad? Should I feel guilty of doing this? Should I feel safe? Is this something okay? So from that perspective, I thought it was important because, as we'll see, we spend a large portion of our time playing these video games. And either you're somebody who is involved in playing games today, sitting here in front of me, and you want to know whether some games are halal or some games are haram, or whether it's good or bad to play computer games, or you're a concerned parent who wants to know whether or not they can shut down, their kids' Xboxes and PlayStations, and they can do other things instead. But the reality is something in between, and you may be surprised with regards to some of the things that I may mention today. First of all, why gaming specifically? As I said, gaming is something which many of us are either involved in directly or indirectly. So maybe, we like playing computer games on the PC, on our laptops, PlayStations, Xbox, etc. Or, we have children or other people who are playing in our homes, or our relatives or cousins or other people who are playing. And research actually shows some very interesting statistics about gaming. Who can tell me the average age of a gamer? Any ideas? Can anyone throw some numbers out? Roughly? 5? Computer games? They can barely pick up a joke at 5.
30.
Huh? 30 years old.
15.
No, it's 30. Around, statistics show on average, research shows the average age of people who play computer games ranges, depending on the research, between 30 and 34. That's the average age of people who play video games. The younger brothers sitting here are thinking, what's going on here? Which 34-year-old is playing computer games? But if you actually think about it, for those of us who are, from my kind of generation, the late 90s, that's when video games became very popular as a result of the release of, the PlayStation, which was in the late 90s. And so if you were in your early 20s, and that was 20 years ago, you're going to be in your 40s now. So, that trend continued with the PlayStation 2 and PS3 and the Xbox and the Sega Saturns and Nintendo GameCube, whatever it was. So the point being, that's the average age. And in fact, statistics show that the people who are around the ages which are of an older generation, meaning 50, 60-year-olds, the numbers of people playing computer games of that age is actually increasing. And people are catering towards, the gaming industry is catering towards people of that age, because obviously that age group is an increasing number. There are more and more older people alive today than there were before. So it's actually interesting. And also statistics show that on average, a person may spend 6 hours a day watching videos, on average, on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. And he may spend 45 hours listening to music, generally speaking, but he'll play 6 or 7 hours per week video games. So it may seem less, but again, it's talking about the age range going all the way up to 35, 40-year-olds, okay, across the board. Now, obviously, those of you who are younger, you're thinking, I play much more than this. I play 6 or 7 hours a day. So it depends on your age. But if you were to take all the statistics of everyone who played computer games from the age of 5 or 6 all the way to 35, 40 years old, on average it would average around that much. And of course, the games industry has changed a lot over the years. Back in the day, there used to be arcades, and if you wanted to play a game, you'd have to go to the arcades, or you may have like the old games, the Atari, or the tennis game where it was just 2 boards and a 1 pixel just going across the screen, or you had the Spectrum, and you had the Amiga, then you had the Sega Mega Drive and all that stuff, and then you had the PlayStation, as I said, coming in later. And last year, statistics showed that the games industry in total, globally, was worth $111 billion with a B. $111 billion. Just to compare it, the movie industry is worth $109 billion. So the gaming industry is now surpassed the movie industry in terms of its value. And like we mentioned, the average time is maybe 6 or 7 hours a week, and people who are around the age of 18 to 25, they'll spend maybe a bit more time, maybe an hour or 2 extra playing a week. And also you'll notice that there's an increase as a result of the internet. Online gaming is like the thing now. Okay, so people play more online gaming, and there's even a separate genre now where a person will watch others playing games on Twitch or on YouTube. Okay, that's what they'll do. We'll just spend our time watching other people play games and finish games, as opposed to playing it ourselves. You have like streaming sites like Twitch and other streaming sites where they'll play video games, and we just watch others playing video games. On average, a person will spend around 1 hour and 48 minutes a week watching somebody else play video games, compared to 1 hour 27 minutes watching traditional sports on normal television. So 1 hour 48 minutes watching other people play games, and 1 hour 27 minutes, so it's about 20 minutes less, watching sports on TV. So again, we shouldn't underestimate, this gaming industry and how influential it actually is, if we are underestimating it. Also, millennial gamers, so those who are around the age of 18 to 35, around that kind of age, they spend more time watching other people play video games than they spend watching traditional sports, while younger people, 18 to 25, spend almost an hour more each week watching online gaming than watching traditional sports. So it's just explaining the previous statistic. Also, you may have noticed some news which talked about esports. So esports is like sports, but it's gaming. So there'll be huge tournaments taking place, global tournaments with people from all over the world, and they'll be competing in a game, and there's lots of money that's at stake if you win. And around a month ago, someone from the UK won almost £1 million for coming second in a Fortnite competition. So there was a Fortnite tournament, and he came second, and he won almost £1 million. There's also another story about the video game Tekken. Anyone know that story? Yeah. Yeah, a Muslim won the game. So a Muslim won the tournament. He was the best Tekken player in the world, and he did sajda after he won the tournament, and he's the best, basically, player in this video game. So, and he's from Pakistan. So the point being that this is a global thing. It's not just something that's been affecting your household or our community. It's a global thing. You'll find players who are involved in esports, which is like it's streamed online. People watch them on YouTube. These global tournaments where people play video games. You'll have some of them from like the Middle East. You'll have popular players from Saudi Arabia and from other parts of the Muslim world as well. Video games is also one of the things that, as a result of video games, it influences the games that we play, influence how we behave and the things we do. So pop culture, it influences pop culture. So for example, Fortnite was something very influential, people would play Fortnite, and then certain celebrations from Fortnite they would do. If they were famous football players, they would celebrate using Fortnite celebrations. So it just shows us how influential gaming actually is. So Fortnite is basically a game where it's a third-person game, and you have to kill each other, and eventually there's a winner, and there's different celebrations at the end. But the point being that it's influential. It's in the mainstream. It's part of pop culture, and there's YouTubers, people who spend most of their time, their lives basically playing video games, and they dedicate their channels on YouTube to basically video games and playing video games. So now that we understand, the depth of video gaming and its influence in our families, in our societies, in our lives, in the globe, on Earth, globally, what do we say with regards to, on a general scale, as a general principle when it comes to playing video games from an Islamic perspective? So, generally speaking, the scholars, they categorize ahkam and rulings in Islam into two. The first is connected to worship. For example, praying, fasting, giving charity, other acts of worship. And they say when it comes to acts of worship, the principle is everything is haram unless there is evidence to prove that it's halal. So, for example, a person can't come into the masjid now and just start jumping up and down and saying he's praying. Why? Because you can't pray however you want. There has to be evidence to prove that how you're worshipping is according to the Qur'an and the Sunnah. So that's a general principle. That's with acts of worship. With regards to things which aren't acts of worship, for example, speaking, sleeping, eating and drinking, walking, etc. Things you do on a day-to-day basis. Activities which aren't anything which isn't considered acts of worship, basically. The principle is the opposite. Which is everything is considered to be halal unless proven otherwise. Everything is halal unless proven otherwise, because Allah says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ لَكُم مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. With regards to the earth, Allah says He is the one who has created for you everything on the earth. Meaning, in principle, everything is permissible with regards to what we eat and drink, and generally speaking, with regards to other things. So they say, al-aslu fil ashya al-ibaha. They say the principle, when it comes to just general things, not acts of worship, is al-ibaha, meaning permissibility. It's permissible. Unless there's something which makes it haram. So straight away that should give us an idea of where Islam stands with regards to just general entertainment and gaming specifically. Meaning it's something which is permissible so long as it doesn't affect a person's Islam. So long as it doesn't, as nothing haram is involved in whatever it is that he's involved in terms of the games he's playing, or the effects of the gaming having on him. So maybe he's playing games and it's affecting him, and we'll mention those things inshallah. And of course in Islam, everything is about al-i'tidal, everything is about moderation, being balanced. So it's never healthy to do anything too much, even ibadah. So the story of Salman al-Farsi, when Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, he was made a brother of Abu Dharr al-Ghifari when he came from Mecca, and he was excessive, he would pray a lot. So during the night he wanted to pray. Salman al-Farsi told him, don't pray. And he wanted to fast. He said, break your fast, eat with me. And the point was, at the end, Salman al-Farsi told him, Inna libadnika alayka haqq. Your body has a right over you. Your family has a right over you. So give everything is due right. Your Lord has a right over you. Meaning there has to be some balance with regards to everything. With regards to even, your acts of worship. So a person shouldn't go overboard with regards to acts of worship where, it affects other things. It affects the rights of his family, his spouse, his children. Work, for example. You can't go to work and just, pray for 3 hours. Or read Qur'an for 3 hours. and say, what's wrong with that? I'm worshipping Allah. You can't do that because you have a contract, you have an agreement that you're supposed to be working for a specific number of hours. So the point being that everything is done in moderation. And the same applies here with regards to computer games, with regards to gaming, with regards to entertainment, any type of entertainment we're talking about. Too much of anything isn't good. Too much of worship, too much of food and drink, too much water as well isn't good for you. Drinking too much water would actually harm you if it's an excessive amount. And water is what we're made from. So anything you do excessively is never going to be good, it's always going to be harmful. And the same is the case with gaming. And there's some examples of incidents that took place where people were addicted to games. And we also have to remember that the games industry is just like any other type of industry where they want you to keep playing. They want you to keep playing. They want to make you addicted to those games. Just like the music industry, just like the film and television industry. Why do TV shows end with cliffhangers at the end? What's the point? Because they want you to watch the next episode. That's the whole point. So the whole idea is they want you to continue to watch. They want to make you addicted. So the way games are designed, the way things are designed generally, is for a person to have repeat customers, to have repeat gamers, repeat viewers. So people will continue to play. And of course people fall for this. So we'll end up playing for 5, 6, 7 hours a day. Because that's how it works. One of the most popular games, Fortnite, it's a free game. You don't have to pay for that game, as some of you would know. Okay, you don't pay anything for that game. So obviously everyone's going to download it because it's free. And so for other things, you may have to get upgrades and to get other things, outfits or whatever it is, weapons or special kinds of weapons. You'll have to pay for those. But generally, to play the game, it's free. And there's effects when this affects people when the games industry is specifically aiming these games at individuals with the intention of making them addicted. So there's stories of, for example, people who were addicted to these games, and they may have been like online games. So you have these online games where you play a character online, and they're called MMORPG games, massively multiplayer online role-playing games. So you have a character, and you're in the online world, and it's a virtual world, and you'll interact with other people, you'll buy and sell things, you'll go on quests and adventures, whatever the case is, and it's like you're living a whole different life. And so what ends up happening, and there was a game called The Sims, it's like 10, 15, 20 years ago, with a similar premise, but it wasn't like online. I don't know if it is now, but the point is you play a different character. So The Sims, this game, which is strange, if you think about it, it's a strange thing, it's a strange idea. The Sims, this game, you controlled a human being, you gave him a name, you gave him a job, and he had a house, and you controlled his life. So he would wake up in the morning, you'd have to take him to the bathroom, okay? He'd have a shower, you'd brush his teeth, you'd give him breakfast, and he'd go to work, he'd come back from work, and then you'd give him some rest, maybe he might have some friends over. It was like a world away from the reality of the life you're living. To the extent where you might forget to sleep and eat and drink because you're too busy, feeding and making sure your character is sleeping and eating and drinking in the game. So the point is, this man from China, he was playing one of these massive online multiplayer games, role-playing games, and after a 3-day online gaming session in which he didn't eat, he barely ate and he barely slept, he basically died. His heart just failed. Another story, a man from Taiwan, a 32-year-old from Taiwan, he died of a cardiac arrest after playing video games non-stop for 3 days. So, and I'm sure there's many of us sitting here today who've been in a situation where we've played games and we've missed breakfast, missed lunch, okay, because we're addicted to a game. Okay, maybe we haven't been out all day, okay, maybe even worse is the salah. So like we said before, if gaming is affecting your ibadah, if there's haram elements now because you're playing a game and dhuhr time comes in and you don't pray dhuhr because of the game, that's a problem now. That's when it becomes a problem. I'm going to talk about this in more detail in a while, inshallah. So again, it depends on the types of games you're playing, whether it's permissible or whether it's not permissible, what kind of content these games have. Like we said, generally the average age is of an older nature, and you do notice games of with adult content in them, because it's aimed at certain people of a certain age. So we all know about some of those popular games, Grand Theft Auto, for example, other games which are aimed at adults. And of course, if you look at the content of these games, straight away you would understand these games wouldn't be allowed, because of issues regarding women in those games, how women are represented, okay, the types of things you have to do in those games, transporting drugs from one place to another, killing people and hiding the body, or whatever the case may be, taking somebody's car and stealing somebody's car, or whatever it is. So generally speaking, I think most of us, we understand that in principle we know what kinds of games would be permissible and what kind of games wouldn't be permissible based on the content, and whether or not they're games which are promoting good things or they're promoting things which are bad. And another thing we have to remember is the issue of time, and whether or not these video games are wasting time. Now, many of us who have children, we're going to say, yes, it is, straight away. You're going to say, yeah, of course, they're wasting time. They spend 5, 6, 7 hours on it every single day. Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tulhikum amwalukum wa awladukum an dhikrillah. O you who believe, don't let your wealth and your children divert you from the remembrance of Allah. So, when it comes to wasting time, it's just like any other kind of activity that we might do. Whether it's sports, whether it's watching something on television, for example. Okay, if it's something which is permissible, there's nothing haram in them, it's the same idea. So if somebody's out playing sports the whole day, and he's playing football all day, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, okay, which people do, it's the same thing if he was playing computer games inside his home. If he's not praying to Allah, if he's not praying the 5 prayers, for example, as a result of being addicted to that activity he's doing, it takes the same ruling. It wouldn't be allowed. So we wouldn't give preference to outdoor sports as opposed to gaming, unless there's obvious harms, because maybe his health is deteriorating, okay, his weight is increasing, okay, he's becoming overweight and obese because of the fact that he's not going out and doing enough exercise. That's a different story. But generally speaking, if a person was out playing sports, if he was playing computer games, or whatever the case may be, it's only an issue of wasting time, regardless of what the activity may be, if it's affecting other things. So for example, can a person play football for an hour, half an hour and a half? Yes. Could he be doing other things which are better? Maybe yes, but also we have to look at our own children and our own communities and who we're thinking about, who we're talking about. There may be some people in our communities, in some neighborhoods, where if they weren't indoors playing computer games, they'd be outdoors in gangs, taking drugs. That's the reality in some of the neighborhoods that we have in this country. Okay? There may be others who, if they weren't playing video games, they'd most likely be hanging around the masjid and attending lectures and talks. That could be the case. So, it could be the case them playing video games is better than the alternative. But it could also be the case that it's worse. Because if they weren't playing video games, your child would be, for example, reading Qur'an, or learning something beneficial, or going to the masjid, or socializing with people who are practicing, etc. So it all depends on the individuals and the children or the people who are involved in gaming. Again, it's not just children we're talking about, like we said. The average age is 30, 34 years old. So it could be adults. The same could apply to adults. What could they be doing if they weren't playing video games? Maybe they would be smoking marijuana, cannabis. Maybe they'd be smoking weed and they'd be hanging around clubs. So maybe it's something that keeps them away from things which are worse. So again, it all depends. So to say that video games are haram or halal, it's too broad of a thing to say, because every single person's circumstances and situations are going to be different. So what are the benefits? How can a person benefit from video games, playing video games? First of all, it could actually bring, well, if you look at the hadith of Salman al-Farsi, okay, that your body has a right over you. The scholars, they also say, سَاعَ لِرَبِّكَ وَسَاعَ لِحُبِّكَ, an hour for your Lord and an hour for what you love. So there's no harm in a person relaxing, taking a break from his studies or his work, whatever he was doing, to basically take his mind off things and relax. And that could be through sports, it could be through watching sports, playing sports, it could be through reading, it could be through playing video games, whatever the case is. So it's something which takes his mind off things, and that's something which could be encouraged. It could be something he may be rewarded for, because he's taking a break so that when he starts worshipping Allah again, he has more energy, he has more strength, he's able to focus more, as opposed to him maybe praying non-stop and just, the repetitiveness of it just distracts him more. He's just not focused as much as he would be if he took a break. Also, like we talked about the young man from Pakistan, Al-Salan Ash, the one who won the video game Tekken tournament. He did a sajda at the end. Now, when you have so many people watching, and of course in this day and age, we have to think about how impactful certain Muslims can be in their positions when it comes to the global, global community, when it comes to people as a whole, in terms of how Islam is represented, how Islam is interpreted, how Islam is viewed, and how Muslims are perceived. Because obviously we all know the dangers of Islamophobia and how people view Muslims. And so when non-Muslims see Muslims in the mainstream, then it's something which makes them think twice about who these people are, because a non-Muslim may think these Muslims stick together in their own little groups, and we don't know what they get up to in their masjids and in their community centers, and we never really see them interacting with us, and so they think maybe they're not, being a productive member of society. So when they see people in mainstream society, it makes them think twice. For example, like in sports, the same thing. You have people like Moeen Ali in cricket. You have the famous Liverpool player, Mohamed Salah. In fact, statistics showed that Islamophobia and Islamophobic-related crimes decreased in Liverpool. And they say one of the reasons why is because of Mohamed Salah. So, there's benefits when it comes to how Muslims are represented in the media and how the wider communities, non-Muslims, will view Muslims as a result of what they see in the media, because of course the media is how people are influenced nowadays. So it could be something used for da'wah. It could be something that a person could use to benefit others and to give a positive image of Islam. The famous sportsman from the last century, Muhammad Ali, the boxer. Okay, how influential was he when it came to, Islam and being proud of being Muslim, etc. Other benefits of video games is hand-eye coordination. So knowing what buttons do what on the screen, and what combination of buttons do on screen, and remembering them. Also, memory, as we just said, memory is also another thing. So not only knowing what the buttons do, but also to remember those things. So a person may be playing 2 or 3 or 4 different games. Every game is different. The controls are different. One's a football game, another one's a fighting game, another one's a shooting game, another one's a racing game. So the buttons will be different, the keys will be different, and so you have to remember those things. So it helps in terms of memory. Also, when it comes to reflexes, so reaction times, you have to be able to react, quickly to kill your opponent or to defeat your opponent in whatever game it is. Problem-solving skills, solving problems when it comes to whichever game you're playing. It may be a puzzle solving game, and research shown that this is considered to be brain training. So you'll have certain games, where you have to solve certain puzzles, or you have to solve. It may just be general problem solving, and it's making you think. It's making you think outside the box. It's basically helping you build problem solving skills. Also decision making, fast analytics, nimble thinking. Research from a university suggested that video games are used, and they could be used to train soldiers and surgeons as well. So there's research out there that shows that they could be used to train people of these professions. Also, I saw the other day people controlling trucks, driving from one place to another from their homes, from their offices. So they're driving, a virtual wheel. So it's just a random steering wheel. It looks like it looks like a toy, but they're actually controlling an actual truck that's driving from one place to another. So they're doing it from the comfort of their own homes. Same thing when it comes to construction yards and bulldozers, or other types of machinery. It can be controlled from an office, from someone's home. Reflexes we've already mentioned. Testing theories and inductive reasoning is another thing that's mentioned with regards to benefits of video games. In one of the researches that was done, and a book that was written, it stressed that the players constantly trying a variety of combinations in games to see what would happen and what would work and what wouldn't work makes them develop inductive reasoning, develop new hypotheses, trial and error, the understanding what works, what doesn't work. So all these things are benefits that we can see from video games. We already mentioned that video games can be harmful. What can those harms be? The biggest thing and the biggest danger of video games as Muslims is that a person could end up doing what?
Dying.
No, even worse than time.
Addicted.
No.
Dying. Dying.
No, not even worse than dying. Disobeying Allah Azza wa Jal. If you're playing a game and the Dhuhr time comes in and you think to yourself, I'll just play for 5 more minutes. It's not going to be 5 more minutes. Most likely it's not going to be 5 more minutes. Okay? Maybe you'll end up playing for another hour, 2 hours. Maybe you won't even notice the time go by. Maybe you may even miss the time for Dhuhr and Asr times come in. Maybe you're playing after Isha and you play all the way till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then you're so tired you go to sleep, and what happens? You don't end up praying Fajr. So that's when it's a problem. If that's happening, that's a problem. And you need to reflect and think about, the steps to cut down. Because that's a problem now. When you're causing disobedience to Allah, when you're not praying, when you're not doing things you're supposed to be doing. Also obedience to parents. So if you're playing a game and your parents call you and you say, yeah, I'm coming, and you play for another half an hour, 2, 3 hours, and you haven't responded, you haven't listened to your parents, you're sinful. Because obedience to parents is second to obedience to Allah. Obedience to parents is second to obedience to Allah. So that's a problem as well. If it's causing you to disobey your parents, that's a problem. Another harm is many video games, they may have music in them. And so you start up a video game, music starts coming out. And if you're able to turn off the music, that's the best thing. Many games do have that option, but some games don't. So you have to be very careful. Anger. Raging. You guys know what raging is. When a person loses and he's been playing for like hours and there's somebody online he just can't beat, and he goes crazy, starts screaming and shouting, throws his joypad, smashes the TV screen, and parents are thinking, what's just happened? What's going on? What was that noise? That happens. Okay? Anger, this type of anger is from shaitan. It's from shaitan. Like why, if you really rationally think about it, why would you get upset if you're playing a video game and in that video game your character dies? Like it's not something to get angry about. Because the whole point of these games is for you to relax, to enjoy yourself. If it's getting to a stage where you're getting stressed out and you're getting, worried and anxious and you have to win, that's the problem now because it's affecting your mental health. And in fact, the NHS declared addiction to gaming as an actual medical problem, as an actual addiction. So they see it as an actual medical addiction now. And they recognize it as a problem that can be treated. Gaming addiction. So if it's causing you to rage and getting angry, that's a problem. And what's even worse is if you're playing and your parents call you and you disobey your parents and also you're showing uquq al-walidain. You're showing bad manners towards your parents by shouting at them, getting angry with your parents. That's even worse. So not only are you disobeying your parents, but also you're getting angry with them, shouting at them. You've been playing for 6-7 hours and your parents have been calling you. They're expecting you to do things for them and they come into your room and see you playing. They'll turn off the video game because they're saying it's not on. And then you may get angry because of what they've done. But you have to understand from their perspective. Because parents also have rights, children have rights, everybody has rights. We have to fulfill those rights. So it's about, again, having that balance. Like we said, gaming is designed to keep you hooked. Gaming is designed to keep you addicted. Gaming, the whole point of a game is that you continue to play. Why is there always, every single year, a new FIFA game? Every single year. It's more or less the same thing. Okay, maybe some of the graphics are better. They change the players' names because they move to a different team. And that's it. Why do they make a new game every single year? Because they know that people are dumb enough to buy the game. Because when we go to school, when we go to university, and somebody asks us, have you got the new FIFA? And you'll be like, no, I've got the old one. Everyone's got the new one. I need to go and buy the new one. Who cares if you've got the new one or the old one? And it costs like 30, 40 pounds or whatever the case is. So the point being, it's not worth the money. Why do they do this? Because people know that they always want the latest and the best. That's not just with gaming, that's with everything, isn't it? If it's a car, for us who are older, if it's a new type of clothing, a new trainers, a new game, if it's, a new film or TV show, we always want to be the ones who are involved in the latest thing. But subhanAllah, it'll never end. There's always going to be something new. It's never going to give you that happiness or contentment. Like we said, the World Health Organization classified a gaming addiction as a medical disorder. Also, gaming could cause a person to be uninterested in other hobbies, other things. A person may shut down when it comes to reading, for example. And of course, as Muslims, maybe reading Qur'an is non-existent because he's playing video games. That's also a problem. Okay? If your behavior is based on the characters in video games, and you're speaking and acting like a character from a video game, that shows how influential those games are in your life now. If the Prophet ﷺ and the companions and the Qur'an and the statements of the Prophet ﷺ are what you imitate and what you remember and what you quote on a daily basis, that's a sign of how you're influenced. If you're quoting games or characters from TV shows or films, that shows how you're being influenced. It's a simple thing. Because obviously we're going to be responsible for the things that we say. Also, a person can end up having poor academic performances. I teach in a school, and one of the students, he was a bright student, mashallah, in secondary school, and his grades just dropped. And he would always be like half asleep in class. And we found out basically he was addicted to his phone, playing games and like other apps on his phone. And he was on his phone during the night. and he ended up sleeping like very late, and he would hardly get any sleep, and so at school he was half asleep. It was affecting his grades, and it's going to affect you. So the point being, gaming can affect your academic performance. It can affect your body if you're not going out and exercising. Like it can also, of course, cause you to increase in weight, become obese. It can cause weight gain. Gaming addiction also, it's said that it can slow down brain growth. It can slow down the growth of the brain. Also, it can negatively affect your eyesight, and it can also result in insomnia, not being able to sleep at night. So a person may be playing all night, trying to finish a game, and he's so tired he sleeps during the day. And then he'll only wake up sort of, after Asr or Maghrib time, and then he'll just carry on playing again. Okay? And if you're the kind of person who's waking up, and the first thing he does is goes to his PlayStation or Xbox, that's a problem. Because if that's the first thing you go to, and the first thing you do isn't to pray, or to see your parents and see if they need anything, or to read some Qur'an, or to do your adhkar, that's a problem. Again, it shows us what's important in our lives. The first thing you do when you wake up is a sign of what you think is important. So what do we do? How can we tackle this problem if we notice some of these signs in us or in our children, people we know? First of all, like we said, gaming is something which is generally permissible. So being involved in what they do, being involved and maybe even playing with them, there's no harm in that. Okay, because there's multiple benefits there. You're spending time with them, which is from Islam. The story of Aisha radiallahu anha, when she said, I was with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu, and I was resting my head on his shoulder, and we were watching Abyssinian slaves playing with their spears in the courtyard of the masjid. Okay? Of course, they weren't doing anything, they weren't praying. They were doing something different. It was a form of entertainment of that time, you could say. And they were spending time as a couple watching something. So as a family, if you do something, as long as whatever it is permissible, then there's no harm in getting involved as a family, because it increases that bond, that love, that openness. Okay, so there's no harm in getting involved in playing a video game, playing games with them, spending time with them, and of course it increases that love, it increases that understanding. You know something about your children. Also for the children, the same thing. Spend time in this context playing with your parents or playing with your other relatives. Also gives you an idea of what kind of things they're involved in. Another thing that we need to also think about is how many games are aimed at Muslims today, and Muslim representation in computer games. Because, like I said, this is one of the most popular forms of entertainment today in the world. But if we look at how Muslims are capitalizing and making games for a Muslim audience, there's hardly anything out there. There are a few games out there that are aimed at Muslim audiences. There's a third-person game where a man it's just a small game where it's in Al-Aqsa, in that area, and it's an actual realistic portrayal of that area in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds. And so the masjid is there, and there's other places he can walk towards and run to different places, and he can get information about those areas. It's more like an educational thing. But the point is, there are some games about the Palestinians and how they're rising up and they fight against the Israelis, for example. Some types of games like this that are kind of aimed at Muslims. But there's an app of a game called Faris, which means knight in Arabic, of a Muslim character, and it's like an adventure kind of game. The point being, there are some games, but there's not that much. And so, wouldn't it be the most beneficial thing and the best thing for us to be able to have that contentment, knowing that our children are playing games which are aimed for Muslims, showing Muslim values and morals? I mean, that would be the perfect thing. But again, it's about if it's about pushing our children in that direction if they're interested. So just like we said, there are individuals who are playing video games and they're winning like £1 million. This isn't like, this could be a profession. And so if your child is that passionate, then again it's about weighing the harms and the benefits. There may be more benefits to that. There may be more harms. If you know your child, there may be more harms in that regard. But again, it depends on your child and what is, what makes him tick, and what gets him interested. So again, there's lots of facets. There's lots of things, moving parts. Lots of things you have to consider and think about when it comes to video games. And inshallah, I hope this is cleared up some questions we may have had with regards to video games and whether or not they're permissible or not, and types of video games and how influential they are, and benefits and harms, etc. So inshallah we'll conclude there. I don't know if you have time. Do you have time for questions or? Okay, so we'll take 3 questions inshallah.
Yeah, so just in terms of the types of games you were mentioning, you gave the example of, is it permissible to play a game where you're carrying drugs around, for example, which is obviously in real life it's not permissible. Can you just clarify on those things? So, for example, a lot of games, including Fortnite, you're killing somebody. Yeah. So again, that's not permissible in Islam. How do you break the games then?
Yeah. So the brother is asking about video games and certain games which may require you to transport drugs or killing other individuals, etc. So there's a couple of things here. First of all, scholars, they say on a general level, if there are certain games where you fight and you're killing others, and it's something which helps with regards to reflexes and hand-eye coordination and learning certain controls and certain keys, then it's permissible because it's not something you're not doing it in real life. So in some cases there may be a difference between killing a character in a video game as opposed to, of course, doing it in real life. In some cases there wouldn't be any distinction. For example, images of women, pornographic images, certain acts or things that may be done on screen. Of course, looking at some of those things would be haram. So in that case, in that situation, those things wouldn't be permissible. So it all depends on what exactly we're referring to. Transporting drugs, of course, is something which isn't permissible if a person did it in real life. In a game, does it carry the same hurma? Is it the same concept? It's not as bad as somebody doing it in real life, but it's not encouraging for a Muslim parent to see his child involved in those types of games, which glamorizes those types of things. Yeah. So is it something which is haram for a person to be involved in? I don't know if I would be comfortable saying that it's haram, but I wouldn't encourage my child to play those types of games where he may be transporting drugs, where he may be, stealing cars or whatever the case may be. So again, there's distinctions that need to be made. Also, it depends on, like we said, your child and what he may be doing if he wasn't playing video games. So it's all on a case-by-case basis, and it all depends on the specific types of games that they may be playing. So it all has to be done on a case-by-case basis, and Allah knows best.
If we are saying that the games are the addictions, so that it will lead you to be addicted, so will that make it haram?
So it was asking if a game leads you to becoming addicted to it, would that make it haram?
So because once you become addicted, then you are disobedient to Allah by missing your prayers and so on and so forth that you have mentioned. So if this source is leading you to something, will that become then?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible that anything which you feel like is causing you to do more of it to the extent where you're becoming addicted and it's affecting your health, it's affecting your ibadah, then of course that thing wouldn't be permissible. Regardless of whether it's video games, Whether it's, for example, a certain type of show, whether it's a certain film, or whatever, whatever the case may be. So if it's something which is making you addicted, like we said, games, television, they all have addictive nature an addictive nature to them. So they're all trying to make you addicted. But it's about the individual and how much he's playing. Just like, for example, it could be, drugs or other things, alcohol. Not every person who drinks alcohol is an addict, but it could cause him to become addicted. So it depends on the individual. Okay, of course, alcohol is haram anyway. We're not saying alcohol obviously is permissible. But the point being that it depends on the individual. So different people will have different responses and reactions to, the games that they're playing. And again, it all depends on what we know with regards to our children, with regards to how our children react to these types of games. And Allah knows best.
Last question: what is the rule in playing games or competing in games for prize? Because now it's becoming a trend. Uncle, can you please wait? Because it's becoming a trend now, as you have mentioned. A boy or a young man, he won a game from Pakistan or from somewhere. So it's becoming a trend that they will have more and more esports and competition. So if someone is playing the games or competing in the games with the proper balance, will that be?
Now Allah knows best, but if the game is a game which doesn't have any haram elements in it, and also if there's no gambling involved, then winning a prize for winning in a certain tournament, whether it's a game, an electronic video game, whether it's a sport in general, Allah Alam, I don't see anything haram about that, as long as there's nothing haram in terms of the game itself or gambling elements. Allah knows best. Allah knows best. Yes, please, you had one last question.
I was going to ask, how would you judge whether the income from the game is halal? Would it be like a personal thing? You said if it affects you negatively, would you say that earning income from that game is bad? Or would it have to look at where the money comes from?
So the brother's asking with regards to income made from a video game, whether it's permissible or not. I think we have to look into more detail with regards to where that money is coming from, if there's any gambling elements. Same with regards to sports, for example, or with regards to other things. Allah knows best. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.